Perfect. All right. Okay, Zoe, thank you for joining us today. And how's things your end of the world?
Oh, they're doing very well, actually. Very excited. 2025, big year. Feels like a lot of magic is happening. So, yeah, doing fabulously. Thank you for asking.
Oh, fabulous. That's great to hear as well. Look, what we do is we ask our guests about how they got to where they are in the sector and give us a little bit of an idea about your journey. How did you end up where you are? A bit about your life and experience. And if you'd like to share that with the audience, that would be fabulous.
Absolutely. I actually have a bit of a funny story, really. Like, I feel like I accidentally fell into education. So growing up, I always wanted to be famous. I wanted to be a performing artist. I was always on the stage. I was dancing 5 days a week. And I'd gone off to uni and done like a degree in performing arts. Finished that, got offered all these jobs to go across the world, and then just kind of just didn't feel right. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, declined them all. And funnily enough, my partner at the time knew someone in early childcare and they were looking for staff. And so I went in and I ended up being like a float staff in early childcare. And it was there that I realized, hang on, I actually really enjoy working with children. I've always worked with children, been drawn to children. And so I decided to do my Bachelor of Education,
Wow.
and continued in the early childcare sector whilst, completing that degree. So I worked there for about 5 years in all different positions. So I actually started off as like the float staff and then assistant and then lead educators. And I worked my way up into the what they call in the preschool room, it was the educator, but now they call that the ETC. And once I'd finished my bachelor degree, I then moved I actually did some volunteer work at a primary school. And I only got halfway through the day when the deputy actually came up to me and she said, "Do you want to get paid for the rest of the day?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I do." And so I ended up with a contract there for a week. And then after that week, the principal actually approached me in the playground. He said, "I've got this contract that's for 12 months. It's in a place called Coral House, small group setting. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course," because you never say no, as a beginning
Never say
teacher.
no.
You never say no.
And can I ask you, how old were you at the time you started your Bachelor of Education?
Oh, so I think I was around 22.
Okay.
So
So
a bit
young still.
older than the rest of my class, but still quite young. But yeah, so he approached me and I said yes. And I went back to the classroom that I was actually relieving in and told the women in that room, what was happening. And they all looked at me like I was a crazy person. They were like, "You're going to Coral House. Do you know what that is?" And it turned out that it was actually an early intervention behaviour therapy centre. And so there were about 10 to 15 schools that would fund this program. And there were 3 staff there, a social and emotional educator, the lead educator that focused on like literacy and numeracy, and then we would have a teacher's aide. And it was a program for kids from prep to grade 2 that really struggled socially and emotionally in the mainstream setting. So they would come to us for 10 weeks. And the first 5 weeks were intensive. So they were with us every single day. And then they would slowly reintegrate back into the classroom with our support. So like a lot of coaching and mentoring to the teachers that they were working with. And the program itself was solely social and emotional work. There was literacy and numeracy embedded into it, but it was really looking at the children's emotions, how to support their regulation, how to, support their different behaviors that were being exhibited because of their dysregulation. And a lot of them did have, quite traumatic backgrounds. And whilst I was in that space, of course, I then realized, okay, hang on a second. Education is actually so much more than, your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's really actually about the whole child. And I grew this real interest into how the brain and the body worked and how to support children's emotions and what that looked like. And so I kind of went down this route of mindfulness and meditation, of contemporary child development. I actually went off and did my master's in cognitive psychology and educational practice. So
Wow,
it was
that's
really,
fantastic.
really cool. And I was there for about 18 months, and then the same principal, because he kind of managed the centre, came back and he said, okay, now it's time for you to come into a mainstream classroom. I want you on grade 3 in my school. And so went into grade 3, and of course all the things that I learnt in with that experience, I was then able to apply into the mainstream classroom. And obviously grade 3 is a NAPLAN year, and there's a lot of unfortunately there
I've
is
done
a
that
lot of
plan 3 times.
yes, exactly, there's all that pressure for the children and to really support them. And so I was then able to start to implement this work that I'd been learning into the classroom, as well as support your general curriculum throughout the week.
Can I ask you,
Mm-hmm.
if you do you think that learning all that you did before that, supporting special behaviours and needs and emotional and intellectual intelligence, what is that what we used to, no, emotional behaviours, wasn't it? Emotional
Yeah,
behaviours.
emotional intelligence, regulation.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, with that experience, and I'm sure this is a yes anyway, could you see the difference in how you applied your teaching compared to, say, someone who didn't have those skills and the behaviours in the classroom? Did you notice a difference?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We saw, so because of my experience, and I was still a beginning teacher, like I'd only like second year in when I actually
Yeah.
moved into the mainstream classroom, but had been with children for like 6 years at this point. Um, because of that experience, I did often get the more challenging children or have the more challenging classroom. And so I wouldn't just get one, I would get, maybe 6, 7, 8. But you would see the difference. I had a lot of children that had high absentees. That lowered. So there was a lot more children actually attending school. Behaviour incidents, major behavioural incidents, definitely lowered significantly as well. The children were able to develop more positive connections to their peers. So we definitely saw a huge impact, even in their, obviously, their learning abilities, because, if they're missing a lot of school or they're dysregulated, we know that they're unable to learn appropriately. And I remember a young man that came to me who he hated writing. Now, he did have ADHD, a little bit of ASD as well. But, big behavioural incidents. And he came into the room, and because of the work we were doing and sitting down and actually touching on the kids' emotions and teaching them, not all the time, but at least once a day, having some kind of discussion or doing some meditation or developing these strategies, they were able to feel so safe. And this little man, in the end, was, at the beginning of the year, a non-writer to writing 3-4 page stories and incredible narratives, like the imagination, the language, the vocab that came out of him. Was he sitting on a chair? No, he had an exercise ball and he was sort of planking between the ball and the desk, but he was writing. And so
But it
yeah, we
doesn't matter
saw
how you do it, right?
exactly, we
Doesn't matter
saw
how you do
such
it.
improvement because of that body of work. And so I stayed in grade 3. I think I was on there 3, maybe 4 years. I can't remember exactly. And then the school actually created a role which was called the Wellbeing Mentor role, which I ended up getting for the school. And we were the first primary school on the Gold Coast to really have this type of role. So it was really, really cool because there was a lot of autonomy across it, but it was also a little bit scary because I was like, okay, what do I do? What does this look like? And when I spoke to my principal at the time too, I was like, okay, let's really dive into this role description. Like, what do you want? He turned, and he was really old school. I remember him saying to me one day, I don't know what you do. It's a little bit weird, but just keep doing it because it's working. But when we sat down to look at the role
Yeah.
description, he turned and said to me, your job is just to make everyone feel happy. I was like,
What a great What a great job
Yes.
description. Wow.
Exactly. He said, just make everyone feel happy. And I was like, okay, how do I do that? So with that role, what it ended up looking like, we had around 1,200. It was a big school, 1,200 kids from prep to grade 6.
That's a
You
big
know,
primary school.
big primary school, obviously a big amount of staff. And my role was not just to support the children, but also mentor our teachers into, what this body of work looks like. So the role ended up looking like every single child in that school got a weekly 1 hour session with me as a class, and we were doing social emotional work. And so that could look like resilience building, meditation, goal setting, what perseverance is. For our older kids, it was looking at puberty and appropriate nutrition and all those kinds of things. So they got an hour session a week. It was a double class, so about 50 kids, which is big. And everyone's like, how did you do that? But the kids were so engaged because it was about them.
Yeah, and
They
also
just,
it wasn't like the sit down, learn,
yeah.
and be. And look, we all know it. Like, especially, I mean, I'm in my 50s, right? So back for me at school, you were either up the front learning or you were up the back not learning, and
Yes.
they only really taught the first 3 rows.
Yes,
And I
yes,
swung between both.
exactly.
And I think, and that's what, and look, I'm making an assumption here, but I believe what you're talking about doesn't just cover one demographic. It's actually across
Mm,
all demographics.
hmm.
And would you include? Would you be? Would you say what you did also covered inclusion of all children, so it gave a better understanding to those who didn't need so much, but in fact they
Yes,
probably need as much, right? Because it is what it is. But and children need so much emotional support, no matter what.
yes, absolutely, yes. It catered to everyone. Every single one of those children absolutely loved it. I mean, obviously, there wasn't the pressure of the actual learning part. Like, if they wanted to write things down, they could write things down. And again, it was all about them. Like, it was a time where they felt like they were really seen, really heard, really valued, because it was about their emotions and developing strategies and skills to support them to be better learners. And we also had the teachers in there. So the classroom teacher had to be part of that because it was a part of their mentoring session. So anything that we spoke about, they could then bring back into the classroom and refer back to it. So it was really, really effective. But not only that, we also ran intervention programs as well. So we ran like a mindfulness based program, a 10-week program where children would be referred to that if they had a little bit more anxiety or displaying anxious type behaviors. And that was a real beautiful program that the kids would engage in. We also did the zones of regulation. I'm not sure if you've heard of that social emotional learning
Yes.
curriculum, but we also embedded that curriculum. And again, that was a referral process. We did like a 10-week curriculum where kids would come in, we'd work with them for 10 weeks. And we had a grief and loss program as well that our chaplain would run, the Seasons of Life, I think it was called. And so we did so much work. We had breakfast clubs, where the kids would come in the morning. We had well-being committees. It was fantastic, to the point where we even created a festival on World Mental Health Day in October, and we would have guest speakers come, and over like between 50 to 80 different community services come and attend that supported mental health prevention. So we had people from like the men's shed come and do woodwork. We would have the fireys and the ambos. We would have, the AFL Suns, police, guest speakers coming in and do confidence work. It was fantastic. And so, yeah, the role was an incredible role, and I loved every second of it. And I had a fantastic team. But in that space as well, I was in that space for about probably 2.5 years, and then I really burnt out.
Yes, that was my next question.
Yes. I burnt out, took some time off, came back, and actually then stepped into an acting deputy role for about 6 months, and then realised, you know what, this is just, I love education, but there's so much more. I'm not following my real passion of really supporting social and emotional development. And I wanted to work more with the adults than the children. And so I ended up leaving education and then starting my own business where I support parents and educators around how to help their little ones with their emotions and develop self-regulatory skills and emotional intelligence and literacy and all that mindfulness-based stuff. So we're in a year and a half now into that program, and I think we've got 8 centres now just already for 2025 that have signed up that we're working with, early childcare centres. We're about to launch a parenting online self-paced course. So yeah, that's my journey. That's where I am today.
Wow. So rather than ask that question I was going to ask you about, which was what led to your experience with burnout, I think we've covered it very well. But
Yes.
looking back on it, is there anything that you would have recognised earlier or done differently to manage that burnout?
Absolutely. Like, I can remember the exact day we had the ARD coming, the Australian Regional Director for our school coming, and I wasn't really aware of it. There was a lot happening that week. We were sitting down. Someone said, oh, the ARD is coming tomorrow. You have to speak to them. And I just absolutely lost it. I just became this blubbering mess. And I thought, okay, I obviously just need some sleep. And I noticed my emotions, like I was raising my voice. You know, I was getting agitated much more easily. I was really struggling to sleep. I was falling into doom scrolling, you know, on social media and things like that. Waking up between the hours of 1 and 3, you know, poor, like all the things that were such, you know, telltale signs. But this particular day, you know, I broke down. I was like, okay, I just need more sleep. Came back to work the next day, sat in my office, and the second I sat down, I just started bawling my eyes out again. I was like, I don't know what, and I didn't really know at the time what was happening. You know, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind because I was like, no, we don't get burnt out. You know, this is the way I am. We're hardworking. Like, you know, this is the way I've been brought up. And bawling my hours out, went and saw my leadership team, who were incredible. You know, they pulled me aside. They said, you go home, take the rest of the week. I think this was a Tuesday. Take the rest of the week. You're getting paid leave. You know, where you're saying that you're working from home, so it doesn't take away from any of your sick leave or hours. Yeah, it was. They were incredible. They said, well, say you're working from home, but I don't want you to work from home. I want you to rest. And then,
That's
so fantastic. I took that. Oh, it was incredible. And this is why I think, you know, one thing that I would, probably jumping ahead here, but one thing I would recommend is communicating when you are in those moments, because there are things that your admin team can do. Not all admin teams and colleagues and stuff are as supportive, but generally you would find some support. And if you can't find it from them, you can find it from, you know, going to regional office or something, because there are things that people can do, especially because we know how significantly burnout is affecting our teachers at the moment, and the teacher shortage because of it, which then in turn affects our children, and so on and so forth. But,
and then effectively society, right?
Exactly.
Really, it's a very much a circle of life, I suppose. Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Because teachers are such an imperative part of our children's little worlds,
and they are our next generation.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And so, well, I remember I took the week off, and I came back the following Monday, and we pulled me. I sat down with the 2 admin that I was really, really close with, and they're like, "How are you?" And again, I just broke down, and there was so much shame attached to it, but it was not because of my environment or my colleagues. It was a projection of my own internal narrative that I'd created, you know, growing up. And I just said to them, I'm so exhausted. I'm so burnt out. I need the rest of the term off. I'm going to take my sick leave. And because, you know, I was the type of person that never took sick leave, I had a lot of sick leave. And so they were, yep, okay, amazing, let's do it. And in fact, they felt a lot of guilt because they sort of, they had said to me, we kind of saw this happening because you took on so much, like you were doing so much, but you also looked like you were so stoic, like it didn't seem like it was affecting you. So we probably should have stepped in earlier. And so when I did come back, we sat down and they'd already come together as an admin team and created boundaries for me before I even came back into the facility. And they
Wow.
said, these are the boundaries that we've set for you. What else do you want to add into this? Like, what else do you think you need? What can we do to support you through this process?
It sounds like that admin team could actually train other admin teams.
Yeah, they were fantastic. Look, a few of them are not part of that team anymore. They've kind of, either retired or gone off and done other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was one in particular. I still am in touch with him. When I left education, I've continued to work with him because he's left as well. I have to give him so much credit because he supported me, not just in that role, but he was also my admin leader when I was in, the mainstream classroom, and was Coral House, one of the administrators for that as well. So he really supported me throughout the whole process. He was always there, always believed in me. He was a huge part of it. So I'm so grateful to him. And I'm also, he helped me get to this position that I'm in here today. So yeah, I was very, very lucky with that particular admin team that supported me.
So now, look, we've covered pretty much how to recognise or do things differently. We've really talked about who might be feeling the early signs of burnout based on your experiences and how to approach that. Is there anything else that you could add that we haven't talked about on those sort of topics or areas about, recognising the signs, what you might do if you're feeling a bit burnt out, and prevention?
Yeah, look,
Covered
I
so
am
much.
so passionate about prevention of burnout, which is why, the work that I do at the moment with our centres is a form of prevention as well, because education and knowledge is power, right? And often a lot of burnout in teachers, the statistics state that it comes from rocking up to work and not feeling like they are equipped to manage everything that's going on in the classroom. And when I talk about everything that's going on in the classroom, it's not delivering the curriculum, because they are fantastic at doing that. It is supporting the children's needs. It's the differentiation process. It's the, supporting what's happened in the playground, the emotions, the feelings, the parents, and then the demands that we have to meet, from the higher above,
The
unfortunately.
regulatory stuff is massive.
Exactly. And it's so big. So I think the first thing I would say is really look internally into what your internal narrative is, because yes, there are teams that aren't great to work with, and yes, we can have families and children that are really, really challenging and can take it out of us. However, from my experience and the experience that I have when I talk to my educators when we go through this process, is our internal narrative and our own belief system is what pushes us into burnout. So for me, like I said, I was taught, or I, thought I had to work 12 hours. I was getting to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had to be the first one there and the last one to leave. Well, it didn't prove anything.
Except that you worked hard.
Exactly. It didn't prove anything at all, really. It was not healthy. I also am a foster carer, and I was raising she was only 6 months at the time. And so I was raising this child as well, and had all that mum guilt and all the rest of it as well. And it was because of my internal dialogue of no, you work hard because you've got to prove a point to everybody. You've got to prove that you are good enough. You've got to prove that you're a good worker. You have to get this work done. And it was more about my internal of what everyone else thought of me.
Can I ask
And
you, how long
yes.
ago was this, Zoe?
So my little one is 5 years old now, so about 5 years ago.
Years ago. And,
Yeah.
and this is probably a little bit controversial, and I don't mean it to be. It's a tricky question. Do you think, I hear what you're saying about pushing yourself, working hard because we've got to prove things. Do you think it impacts females over those last 10 years compared to males because of that idea that we're not as good, or we're not as, and I'm generalizing, totally
Yes.
generalizing,
Yeah.
because there are some really out there women who don't have that. They set really strong boundaries from the
Yes.
beginning. Then there's the rest of us who go, we've got to do so well. We've got to
We do a bit of we play the martyr act, don't we?
Yeah.
I was definitely a victim of being the martyr. Yes, I 100%. Look, could be controversial again. Men and women are very different. And the 9 to 5 role is actually developed based off a man's hormonal cycle. Their hormonal cycle is 24 hours. Ours is 28 to 30 days. So they reset every day and they feel good the next day. Whereas we know that we don't. We have all the different phases. And so this 9 to 5 and trying to fit into that 9 to 5, plus most of us are probably mothers, going home and looking out over the house and raising all the children and doing all the things, it does not support us and the makeup of what we are as women. So absolutely it does. And, obviously coming back to then, the dynamic of what it used to look like and the whole, like, the push for no, women need equal rights and all the things, it does add to that, and us trying to prove that we can do everything that the man can do, but at the end of the day, we're not the same. So we physically cannot work that way. So yes, I do think that adds to a lot of it.
We can't sustain it anyway.
No, that's right. That's right.
Well.
And I think so. Coming back to with prevention, I think firstly really looking internally at, okay, what is working for me? What boundaries do I need to set for myself? And are these going to be hard for me because of the way that I have lived for, 30, 40, 50 years already? How can I keep myself accountable? I would also say, and that's when, I had a real strong mindfulness and meditation practice, and I really had to focus on that as well. So going in, acknowledging the feelings that I was actually feeling, those feelings of I'm failing, I'm not good enough, journaling about it, and then also communicating it to others and normalizing it, because the more I communicated with other people, the more I went, oh, okay, it's actually not just me. And these feelings are really normal, and they come and go, and being really gentle with yourself around it.
Yeah, and look, I'll just share a quick story with you.
Yes.
A wonderful friend of mine, and I know she won't mind me sharing this because no names, no pactoral sort of thing. And she was a single parent from when her 2 young boys were like 2 and 4. But she had full custody. She had to do all the things that a husband and wife or a mum and dad would normally do. And she had ambitions. So she was in HR. And, of course, she had to go to executive meetings where it was 98% men. Talking 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago. And she said, they would have these lovely dinners out. They would do all these things. And they would invite her, of course, but then couldn't understand why she couldn't go. And I remember her telling me, she actually said to them one day, you guys go home to your wives, where they're your support person at home looking after the family. I go home and I have to be the mum, the wife, the everything. And I'm doing it both ways. So I just take that on board and think that sort of paints the picture of, and I'm not saying every man obviously has this, and I know
no, absolutely not, yes.
And we are talking a long time ago, but that really resonated with me, and thinking, wow, we are pretty amazing where women are doing that, and supporting it, and it isn't sustainable. It isn't sustainable anyway.
Yes, no, that was what I was going to say next. I'm like, it's as amazing and as powerful as we are, it's not sustainable. And even if we don't essentially burn out, our body is burning out, right? Like we're constantly in stress response. So we're in that fight, flight, freeze response all the time, which affects our hormones, which affects our health. So when we have, those high cortisol levels, which we do when we're in that stress response, which I should add, multitasking actually triggers the amygdala. So you have your stress response. So multitasking is actually not effective. You're in your stress response in that stage. So it's not healthy for you. But when you have those high level of cortisol, it's so unhealthy for your body long term, with weight distribution, with your sleep, nutrition, the way you take in your minerals and all that nourishment. And it really affects our health. A lot of teachers, and I say this with so much love, but a lot of teachers, when you go into the facilities and onto campuses, look so unhealthy. We come back after our 6 weeks or 8 weeks off over summer, and we've gotten into this beautiful routine of being able to relax, and we look amazing. And then by the end of the 10 weeks, we look like crap. Like we look like absolute crap because
You look
our
like you've
health
been
is
through the
just
ringer.
like we're just deteriorating. And when you look in, you can see how unhealthy a lot of our educators are. And it's because the workload and what the pressures that we're putting on ourselves to, and of course that pressure is always going to be there because you've got little people's lives in your hands, don't you? But it's not sustainable, and it is really affecting our own health and well-being. So,
and that doesn't help the children you're teaching.
Exactly. And I think I read a stat from last year that in Australia, and it's gone up, the current, I think we're at 76% of educators actually burn out. And then and then you have a look, the stat that's been here since I first started education, which is almost 15 years ago, where it's, I think, 1 in 4 educators drop out in the first 5 years of teaching. And I'm like, well, that stat hasn't changed since 15 years ago. So we haven't done anything to actually support that and fix that issue. That's a huge issue. There's so much work around better pay for teachers, and the pay is incredible, but there's so much more work that needs to be done. I think all of the education that I did myself around supporting behavior and emotions and things like that needs to be embedded into what we do at uni, or for our early childcare centered educators. When they do their diplomas, they don't touch on child development at all. So, early educators, we know that the first 5 years of a child's life are the most important for setting them up, and yet they do no work around contemporary child development. So when I go in and say to them, the most common question I get when I go in, I'm like, how can I support you? Oh, my 2-year-olds in this room don't know how to self-regulate. And when I turn around and say to them, well, that's because they don't have the brain structure to self-regulate. In fact, that brain structure doesn't even start to develop until, 5 years old, and isn't completely developed until 28 to 30 years of age. They are like bamboozled. They look at me and they're like, what? And I feel like that information should be some of the first things that we are taught as educators, so that we can understand where our little people's brains, bodies are at when they are coming to us, so that we can properly support them and remove some of the, stigmas we have around, kids having tantrums, or, which I hate that word. For me, it's a dysregulated moment. It's really, really sad that this work is not being touched with our educators at all.
And it's not even about the educators. What you're sharing is really important for parents.
Yes.
Whether you're a teacher, an educator, a mum or a dad listening, I mean, it's amazing, really, to learn that and also understand that it is to your 20s and 30s, early.
Yes.
Because everyone's different, right? So it's so important to understand that, and not everyone knows how to work it, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got dysregulated parents, you've got neurodiverse
Yeah.
parents, you've
Mm-hmm.
got ones who expectations are different to what their child's trying to cope with. There's so
Yes.
many things. A parent of 3 kids, this is like literally coming from me going, oh,
Yes.
every one of them is different.
Oh, raising children is so hard. It's so beautiful, but it is so hard. And, you know, yes, there are so many things that and factors into it that we don't learn about, which is why, you know, like I said, I left the sector because for me it was so important. I wanted to be there for the parents and the educators, because you can do so much work with the children around developing, you know, their self-regulatory skills and emotional intelligence and all the rest of it. But if that's not carried on within the home or within their classrooms, then there's no point in doing that learning. And so it's the adults that need that support, because we didn't have that growing up. All of this is a very new movement, right? All the science around mindfulness-based programs and mindfulness support, all the holding space and the understanding, the true understanding of the stress response. And, you know, when the amygdala in the stress response takes over, when the prefrontal cortex shuts down, which I call the wise owl, it's our problem solving, our understanding of emotions, that shuts down when the amygdala actually takes over. Just knowing that knowledge when our child is having a big moment helps us to step back and not feel so triggered ourselves and go, okay, hang on a second, this kid actually can't hear anything I'm saying to them right now, because the part of the brain that they need to listen to me right now is completely shut off. So I just need to hold space for them and wait for them till they're ready. Just those little pieces of information can make the world of difference to, you know, raising our children, supporting our children in the classroom.
Fantastic. But just looking forward, what do you feel are the big topics for the sector in the sort of next 2 to 5 years?
I think it's all that social emotional learning work and the curriculum around that and how to embed that into our classrooms and support our teachers with that embedding of it. So that work has already begun to start. However, it's just part of the curriculum, and our teachers are not taught how to specifically teach it. Or a lot of our teachers feel really uncomfortable with that work, because it is hard to know, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? So that, I think, definitely education, I hope, is moving slowly in that direction to really support those needs. I think educator burnout in general is a big topic. I think it needs to be not just discussed anymore. It needs to actually be some preventative measures need to be put into place. So I do hope that those are the things that moving forward, we know the effect that it's having. So moving forward, what are the things that we need to do that support it? And I feel like that is where we're going with not just education, but just with raising children in general.
Yeah, which is what's so needed. Now, I know before we finish up,
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any wise words or motivational quotes that you would like to share with our audience, just to give them an idea of what motivates you, I suppose, or what really resonates with you?
Oh, that's a hard one. I am the type of person that needs to check in with myself every day. So every day, whatever motivation gets me through the day, it's so different. So I guess I would suggest, when you wake up, just taking that moment to, even if it's just sitting on the side of your bed, take a few deep breaths, really connect with yourself and ask yourself, what do I need today? What does my body need today? Do I need to go for a little walk? Do I need to drink some more water? Do I need to talk to a friend? Just really connecting with yourself and finding out what it is that's going to really support you and motivate you and hold space for yourself to, get through the day. So that's mine. I don't have a specific one.
But that's
every
wonderful.
Day is so different.
Because I think that can make if someone can understand why you do those things, it may prevent that burnout.
Yes. Yeah.
Or recognising that burnout's possible and
Absolutely.
pulling back from that. Now, can I also ask, Zoe, with your consultancy, do
Hmm.
you look after Australia-wide, or is it just Queensland? Is it for parents, educators, admin teams?
Yes, so we are worldwide, really.
Oh, wow.
I do have some parenting clients over in New Zealand that I like to, work with. We are for anybody involved with the child. So predominantly a lot of our work is sort of northern New South Wales, Gold Coast, Brisbane area. However, we do work across the board. We have a parenting course, which is not just for parents, because for me, like, I'm a foster carer, right? So I really am about, it's the village that raises the child. We are releasing an online self-paced, parenting course mid-February. But yes, we do work with educators across the board via Zoom. We can fly down when centres, and schools want us to be on the floor to see some of the work with them. And our on the floor work is some of our, most potent work as well. But yes, we are very happy to work with anyone and everyone because we're just so passionate about it.
No, that's so good, because that's what I wanted to make sure that our audience understood, that you can
Hmm.
cover basically global. Um,
Yes.
now, what I'll just mention here is, if you can share with us so that we can share with our audience
Hmm.
about your business, about your consultancy and what you
Yeah.
provide, which would be great. And also, just thank you so much for joining us today. Honestly, it's even helped me. So,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
so fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, I
And,
loved it.
and
Well,
I
no,
tell you,
so our work, we are called the Dandelion Mindful Education and Holistic Practices. And so I'll start with what we do for our educators. We run a number of different workshops around trauma informed practices, how to embed positive behavior for learning into your, service centers or schools really, really effectively. We also run workshops around social emotional learning curriculums. So having a look at how to embed particular curriculums like the zones of regulation into your schools or into your childcare centres to really support. And we run a workshop that is a mindful educator, so how to embed mindfulness. We also run a burnout workshop as well. But with that body of work too is we always like to either come in on the floor or work face to face once they've done the workshops, because you go to PDs and think, oh, this is so great, and then you go to embed it into the classroom, and that's when all the questions and the challenges arise and you have no one to talk to about it. And so we're very passionate and push, like, us coming onto the floor afterwards and working on the floor with our educators and things to help them for the most effective and efficient work. We do one-on-one mentoring. We have parenting one-on-one coaching and mentoring as well. And our parent and mentoring coach, she also works with children, so that can either be via Zoom or in the home. We like to do a lot of the work with our kids, particularly in their home, because that's their safe space. Or if they don't feel comfortable going out to parks, all of our work is really curated to the individual. So we like to have a free 15-minute sort of consultation first to get a good idea, and then create some sort of strategic action plan that's based off the needs of the educators or the children or the parents. And like I said, we have our online parenting course coming soon, which is really exciting, and some more exciting things coming a little bit later on in the year. So if you
so
want
what?
to find us, we are on socials. We're the dandelion.mindfuleducation. And our website is actually just being tweaked. We're having a relaunch of our website coming soon as well.
Fantastic. So watch this space.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Like I
Thank
said, it's
you.
been fabulous to
Thank
talk with
you.
you today.
You too. Thank you so much for your time.
Not a problem. We'll catch up soon.
Yes, thanks. Bye.